Hey, everybody, welcome to the Aligned Love Podcast. This is the place where I am going to help you find the one thing that you feel is missing: healthy love. I am your host, Lauren Zoeller, and in this podcast, I will share with you how to attract love, live in alignment, and elevate your deepest relationships. So buckle up, get present, tune into your body, and open up to the possibility that you truly do get to have it all. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to the Aligned Love Podcast. This is a really exciting episode because I am going to be doing a tell-all episode. If you follow me on social channels, Instagram, TikTok, you know that I often poll all of you about what questions you have. I know that sometimes it's difficult to get into a one-on-one container when you're wanting support and you're wanting advice. And you may have questions that you feel like you really just want answered before you trust someone in really leading you down the path of stepping into the relationship that you desire, the life that you desire. So I often do Q&A posts so that I can really be with you and answer some of these burning questions that you may have. So what I decided to do on the podcast today is take some of these questions that I haven't had time to get to and answer them in depth. So we're going to be going pretty deep. We're going to be talking about the divine feminine. We're going to be talking about how to get over someone who doesn't want to date you. We're going to be talking about how to really, truly get, if you are in a relationship, your partner to step fully into his masculine or you fully into your feminine. We're going to be covering all the bases in today's episode. So get excited. I'm going to try to get through as many questions as I can. You all are amazing. Thank you so much for the support so far and for all the questions that you've sent in based on previous episodes. We're going to continue to do some of these tell-all episodes every now and then so that I can really get real, raw, vulnerable, and you can experience some of my coaching. So without further ado, let's jump into the first question. And the first question and the second question, I'm actually going to combine because the answer to both of them is the same. And someone asked me, how do you get over someone who does not want to date you? And here's the question that came after that. How do I stop having feelings for someone who continues to hurt me over and over again? Here's what I'm going to say to this. Until you do the work to heal the parts of you that need someone else to validate your existence, validate your worth, make you feel loved and like you belong and that you're worthy of receiving love, until you heal those parts of yourself, you will continue to struggle with thinking and ruminating about someone who doesn't want to date you. And you will continue to stay in partnerships that are not truly deeply what you desire because your nervous system is so conditioned to need that hit of external validation. So if you haven't done any work in the nervous system is the most primary part of our being as humans. And it does two things. It helps us connect and it also protects us. So at a young age, if you experience trauma and there is what I like to call a relational rupture that took you out of feeling like you were worthy, no matter what. If let's say you had parents that were emotionally unavailable or you dated a string of emotionally unavailable men, whatever happened when you were younger or in your teenage years or even into your adult years, these situations have an effect on the way that your nervous system feels and perceives safety. So if you find yourself ruminating over someone who doesn't choose you or staying in partnerships longer than you should, when you know that that person continues to hurt you over and over again, your nervous system is acting on a false sense of safety, which is why you feel this need to continue to stay in that type of a dynamic in a partnership. So until you do the work to identify those dysregulated patterns in your system, and truly get your nervous system to a true sense of what we call ventral vagal connection safety, and that becomes your baseline. Until you do that work, your nervous system is going to continue to stay in that dynamic because it feels safe There's a false sense of safety in feeling like someone else can validate your worth and validate your existence. So all of these, all of these experts out there who are telling you, well, just don't think about that person or move on. And it's not that easy. And I hope that this is giving someone out there who's listening to it some sort of hope, because you can't just get over someone if your nervous system has been conditioned to feel safe and to receive validation and worth in that dynamic. And until you learn to heal that, until you learn to truly regulate that dysregulated response and heal that relational rupture in your nervous system, you will continue to stay in those types of relationship dynamics because it's the only thing your nervous system knows. This is why talk therapy is fantastic, but it only addresses 20% of the problem. If you haven't done the work to look at your nervous system, you're missing 80% of the healing puzzle. So if this is you, it's time to start looking at your nervous system. It's time to start looking at those patterns that are keeping you in relationship dynamics, such as these two questions that were just asked. This is what we do in my program, the Align Love Collective. So if you feel like you need support in this area, this is what we do. We help you identify your dysregulated nervous system patterns so that you can use somatic experiencing and somatic therapy to heal these relational ruptures and no longer ruminate around people that don't want to be with you. Because the truth is this, you actually don't want to be with somebody who doesn't want to be with you, but your nervous system feels like it's death because you weren't chosen. So you keep continuing to think about this person because your nervous system feels like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die because this person didn't choose me. It's survival. So until you learn to shift that baseline, you're going to continue to attract the same thing over and over, and you're going to stay in these dynamics. Okay. Next question. How do you let go of resentment and anger to an ex when you have to co-parent with them? Man, this is a difficult one. This is a difficult one. And I'll say this, I do not have personal experience co-parenting with anyone because I do not have children with anyone. So take this for what it's worth. I have had a lot. And when I say a lot, probably over 50% of my clientele who have navigated this. And I will say that it is a daily practice. It is a daily practice of knowing safety within yourself, of being really clear on your own boundaries and also on your boundaries with the person that you are co-parenting with. It also is a daily practice of forgiveness. I posted about this on my Instagram page about a week ago. I teach forgiveness a little different. And if you look at the energetic vibrational frequency that is associated with emotions, oftentimes when we are holding on to resentment, anger, blame, shame, those are lower vibrational frequency emotions. If you want to geek out on this, you can follow Dr. Bruce Lipton. He talks a lot about it. You can also follow Joe Dispenza. He speaks a lot about the energetic vibrational frequency of emotions. They have tested it. It is scientifically proven that every emotion has an energetic frequency associated with it. When we are in these lower vibrational frequency emotions, such as anger, blame, shame, fear, we are going to continue to attract situations that are similar to that energetic vibrational frequency. So if you are not doing the work to get to acceptance, to get to love, to get to courage, right? Even just acceptance and courage have a higher vibrational frequency than resentment and blame and shame and fear and anger. So if you're not doing that work to actively get yourself to that space, it's going to be really hard to co-parent with someone because you're going to be meeting a mirror of where you are internally. So it's a practice, and most people don't want to hear that. It's a practice of continuing to surrender, of continuing to forgive, of continuing to really know your boundaries and use your voice and feel like you're in this space of deep worthiness, of claiming what it is that you need, but also meeting that person where they are with compassion, with courage, with acceptance. because those are higher vibrational frequency emotions. And I promise you that once you start to practice that and you truly commit yourself to that practice, that co-parenting becomes easier because everything in your life is a mirror. Everything. So when you learn to shift your internal being to the space of acceptance and love and peace, what shows up in your external reality is going to do the same. Right. And so it's a both and. You've got to be really clear on who you are and what you are worth receiving in your life. And you have to use your voice to set boundaries. And you also have to practice this space of acceptance and love for yourself. Because when you forgive truly yourself, when you forgive others, what shows up in your reality shifts too. So hopefully that is helpful. I have a lot of clients who have to co-parent, and there's a whole nother level when you introduce someone else into the mix, but it's always a practice, always. Okay, next question. So simple, but I love this question. What is your best heartache advice? Well, I'll say this. If I don't have experience with co-parenting, but if there is one thing in the world that I have a lot of experience in, it is heartache and heartbreak. And I have gone through it more times than I can count on my hands and toes. And the first thing I will say is this. The best thing that you can do when you are hurting and when you are heartbroken is to feel all of it. Now, if you would have told me this 10, 15 years ago, I would have been like, no way. It's too heavy. It's too hard. But the way that you make your way through grief, because truly heartache is grief, is to feel all of the different emotions that are associated with it. And to know that these emotions don't last forever. They don't. No emotion does. The lifespan of an emotion is actually very small. So you have to give yourself grace in knowing that all of these emotions are going to come up and they're all welcome. Even just saying that out loud to yourself when you're experiencing heartache or you're experiencing heartbreak, you can feel a sense of safety come over your body, this sense of, oh, it's okay for me to feel this deep anger, this rage. It's okay for me to feel overwhelmed with sadness. It's okay for me to feel confusion. It's okay for me to feel happy and joyful. It's also okay for me to grieve and feel all the emotions associated with grief. So when you give yourself permission to truly feel all of the emotions, a lot will open up for you and you'll move through heartache and heartbreak in a much quicker fashion because you're not shoving all that down. With that being said, if you don't have a lot of experience in feeling and being with big emotions, I would say reach out for support. When I was going through heartbreak, one of my lifelines was that I increased how much I was seeing my therapists and my coaches and my somatic practitioners, because it helped me process. It helped me process verbally. It helped me process physically. It helped me process spiritually. And I knew that I needed that extra support during that time. So reach out. You are not meant to go through it alone. And take care of yourself. Self-care has to be your number one priority. It's always your priority, right? Self-care should always be your number one. But when you are processing grief, when you are processing heartache and heartbreak, self-care, and what I mean by self-care is do the things that you know bring you safety in your body. So I'll give you an example. I know that I'm a verbal processor. I know who my safe people are. I would set up a daily call with my safe people so I could verbally process. I also knew that I needed yoga. I needed massages. I needed to get my nails done. I didn't want to sit in meditation. Meditation didn't feel, when I was going through massive heartbreak, it didn't feel safe to me. And so I leaned into the things that I knew brought me safety. So I would suggest that you do this now. Create a list of things that you know make you feel safe. Your people, the places, the things that you know elicit a sense of safety in your body. Because you can use that, because when you're going through heartbreak, and I'm sure people can resonate with this. When you're going through heartbreak and you're going through heartache, sometimes you forget to shower. Sometimes you forget to eat. Sometimes you forget to do the things that you would do on a normal daily basis because you're in survival mode. So the most important thing is for you to be able to pull out that list and say, wait, okay, I can't think right now. I am overwhelmed with sadness. I'm overwhelmed with anger. Where can I go to resource a little bit? Who can I lean into? And this is what you need to create now, because heartbreak's going to happen. Grief's going to happen. Heartache is going to happen. We're human. You can't run from it. It's going to happen. If you're listening to this at some point in the next week, month, year, you are going to experience heartache and heartbreak. So if you have your resource list ready to go, it makes it much easier. So feel your feelings, commit to self-care, lean on support, ask for support. Those are my top 3 heartbreak and heartache advice tips, if you will. Okay. Couple more questions. This is kind of fun. I'm just totally flying off the cuff with you guys. Hopefully you're enjoying this because I enjoy answering your questions, and I don't necessarily get to see these questions. I try to keep it, just so all of you know, I try to keep it really fresh. So I don't look at these and write anything out. I just kind of go off the cuff. So you're getting real raw, vulnerable Lauren, giving you real life coaching advice here. Okay. Next question. How do I know if returning to an ex is good or not? This is going to be simple. I say this all the time. If you break up with someone and both of you have not committed to growth on both sides, all you're doing is repeating a pattern. That's it. If the relationship didn't work, it didn't work for a reason. So if you separate and neither one of you have taken the time to truly process why it didn't work, what you both needed to do differently, and you decide to come back together, all you're doing is repeating a pattern if there has not been any growth. So if an ex comes back into your life, if an ex came back into my life and I was single, I would ask, tell me what you've done. Tell me what growth you have committed to while we were apart. Let's process it. And I'm going to tell you what growth I've committed to, so that you're not repeating a pattern, and there's that real, honest, vulnerable conversation around, this is what I've done to grow. This is what you've done to grow. How are we going to enter into this new container with different intentions? How is it going to be different this time around? That is how you know whether or not it is good to return to an ex, period. Next question. Hopefully that was, it's straightforward, right? How many times have you gone back to an ex and then you end up breaking up for the same reason that you broke up the time before? We have to grow. We have to grow. We have to shift patterns, or else all we're doing is repeating patterns in our lives. Okay. Okay. Next question. So somebody asked me this last week, and I felt like it was too much to dive into this particular question in a story slide. So we're going to dive deep into it on the podcast right now. And I'm actually going to flip, because I'm looking at these questions now. My team gave me these questions. I'm actually going to flip these 2 questions. So the question that I was going to answer is, you posted something last week about the difference between mothering a significant other and being a lover. How do you know the difference? So I'm going to answer that. But then there's another question that I was asked. What are examples of what it's like to be in your feminine? I'm going to answer that one first, because I feel like it's going to set up how I'm going to answer the second one. Okay. So let me answer, what are examples of what it feels like to be in your feminine? So the feminine is all about, there's so many different aspects to what I like to call the divine feminine. The divine feminine is all about deep intuition, deep knowing, deep nourishment, deep compassion, this space of creativity and expression. Also, the divine feminine is truly in touch with what I like to call the different cycles of nature. She understands that her body is an expression of what we of nature, of the cycles, right? Of the cycles of, summer, spring, winter, fall. She is connected to everything. And in this space of connectedness, of deep intuition, there is this sense of empowerment and this sense of strength. So I know personally that I am connected to my divine feminine when I am able to recognize my need to want to control in my partnership and to say, wait a second, I'm going to step back, I'm going to get still, and I'm going to listen. It is the deep connectedness to my intuition that reminds me that I am in my divine feminine. And it's the listening to that intuition and the following of that intuition that has created the most beautiful things in my life. I often tell the story that, and Sean laughs at me because it was very different for him, as it should be, because he is in the masculine. But I felt Sean before Sean made his way in the physical form into my life. And I knew I had a deep knowing who he was and how he felt in my presence before he was actually in the physical. That was my connection to the divine. That was my connection to the deepest divine feminine part of myself that I had to do a lot of work to connect to, because most of us are raised in a society that teaches us to disconnect from that. And when a woman is truly deeply connected to her divine feminine, she has insane wisdom and insane insight, and she trusts it. So it's difficult. And I studied this for a long time, had some wonderful teachers. And there's something about truly just knowing and surrendering and feeling that deep connection to self and that deep connection to intuition that can't be explained. It can only be felt. Right? So I know that I am truly tapped into my divine feminine when I feel that everything is interconnected. Everything is aligned. And it's because I'm listening to that deep sense of intuition within myself. And I can feel that I am one with divine. I am one with the force, with God, the universe, whatever you believe in. I am one with that force in my life. And I can feel it. And I know the moment I'm not in my divine feminine. I control. I freak out. Sean laughs. He says that he knows I'm not there when it's life or death. Everything is life or death. Like the ceiling is going to cave in and the world's going to end. I know I'm not tapped into my divine feminine when that is the way that I'm showing up in life. I also know I'm not in my divine feminine when I'm constantly in that space of control with Sean. I'm in that masculine. I've got to push. I've got to control. I've got to create in a box. I was telling somebody the other day that I used to be the woman who things would show up in boxes and they would be taped and super glued. And when something wasn't meant for me anymore, that box would start to fall apart. The glue would come undone, the tape would start to unravel. And Lauren, who is not in her divine feminine, would go in there and wrap the box, like keep trying to duct tape it, keep trying to super glue it. And it just kept trying to fall apart, fall apart, fall apart. Now that I'm truly connected to my divine feminine, it's still a practice, but I know now that the sooner I let that box fall apart, the sooner that I allow myself for things to just end when they're supposed to end, because they're not meant for me. What is meant for me can come in without a fight. And it's always the thing that I always wanted. right? So that connection to divine feminine is that space of surrender and that's deep, deep connectedness to your intuition and to the divine. Now, the next question, which I'm now going to answer, is when someone is in mothering energy versus lover energy, how do you know? And I'll tell you that the way you know is you are more committed to that, what I like to call the wounded feminine or overly masculine traits within the partnership. So a woman who is in mothering energy is overprotective. She cannot surrender control. She has to be in control all the time. She excessively gives advice. So there's no holding space. It's just she's always right and she's always giving advice. There's a lack of autonomy. So she feels like she doesn't have her own world and the person that she's with doesn't have his own world. It's so codependent and commingled, and there's no sense of independence. Also, she feels like she needs to fix all of his problems. When you are with a true masculine man, you don't need to fix his problems. You are not his mother. You are his lover. And so this space of being in overprotectiveness, of feeling like you need to protect that person, you need to fix their problems, you need to control everything that they do, that is a sign of you being in mothering energy versus deep, loving, aligned partnership, which is I am independent, you are independent. If there is a pile of clothes on the floor, you're not picking up that pile of clothes that has been sitting there for 5 days and folding it for him and putting it away and then berating him that he needs to pick it up. You have a conversation with him saying, hey, it's really important for me to have a clean home. I noticed that your clothes have been sitting there. Do you mind picking them up? I love you. Do you mind picking them up? Much different than feeling like you need to fix and be overprotective and control. Okay. Which then leads into our very last question for today. And I'm going to try to keep these short. So I'm trying to keep these podcast interviews short. But I feel like this is a really great one. How can you handle stepping into your feminine with a man who's not very masculine? And I'll spill the beans on this one. When I saw this one come through, I actually pulled Sean about this. I'm like, what would you say about this? And we both had the same answer, which was really great. And here's what we really think about this question. First off, you've got to use your voice. So if you are in a relationship where you feel like a man is not fully in his masculine, you are going to have to use your voice to tell him how you feel. Now, oftentimes that feels like death to women. So if that feels like it is hard for you, then you may want to lean into why is it hard for you? What's coming up around why this feels like death in your nervous system to use your voice. But you always have to use your voice to tell your man how you feel. Then the second part of that, as you're using your voice, you've got to ask for what you need. Most women will say, oh, my man's not masculine enough. And then I'll ask the question, okay, why? What is he doing that doesn't feel like it's masculine enough? And they will list all of these things. Well, he's too rough. He's not sensual with me in the bedroom. He doesn't use his voice. We don't talk about emotions. He feels like he has to fix everything all the time when all I want him to do is just listen, all these things. And then I'll ask her, okay, well, have you spoken that to him? And it goes radio silent. You have to be able to ask for what you need. Sean and I just had an instance last night in this very same arena and topic. I was holding things in, and this morning he came up to me. He's like, what is going on? And I told him exactly what it is that I needed. Sean is fun and playful. And sometimes, and if you've ever taken the sexual archetype quiz before, if you haven't, I'll drop it in the show notes by Jaya. I'm going to try to get Jaya here on the show to talk about the sexual archetype quiz. I am a sensual sexual archetype, which means I love candles. I love soft music. I love the lights low. I love to be caressed. I am as sensual as they come. Sean is a shapeshifter, which means he likes it all. He likes it kinky. He likes it sensual. He likes it, in spontaneous places. Like he can shapeshift to anything. But oftentimes, sensual is not the way he runs his life, right? He's playful. He's fun. He doesn't really think about that sensual meter. And I was struggling a little bit with it. And I was keeping it inside. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to romance myself. I'm going to get myself flowers. I'm going to take care of myself. And of course, because we have the most open relationship in the world from a communication standpoint, he noticed something was going on. And so I had to then use my voice and say, I need a little bit more sensuality. We've kind of gotten off track since we started dating. And I need more. Like I need more right now than what I'm getting. And he was like, babe, you've got to use your voice and tell me these things. I'm going to work on it. I'll give you more. And I know that he will because I trust him. But I had to feel comfortable enough to use my voice and ask for what I need. And this is a great example that this is a practice. And he told me, Lauren, you've got to use your voice. You have to ask for what you need. And so that's the first thing that I would say. Use your voice, ask for what you need. The other thing is that you need to nurture your own feminine needs. So it is not solely up to our partner to give us everything that we need in the feminine. So you've got to start to look at, when I spoke earlier about what it looks like to be in your feminine, do you have a surrender practice? Are you taking time to really listen to your intuition? Have you done the work to know safety in your body? Are you able to enjoy nice things, luxury, self-care? Are you able to do these things that really nurture your feminine? Do you have a daily conversation with the divine? And if the answer is no, how can you expect someone else to be in polarity partnership with you there? So nurture those own feminine needs in yourself and then ask for support. I'm really excited to announce that I have something very, very, very exciting that is going to be dropping in the next 2 weeks that is going to help you with this very exact thing. So stay tuned, but ask for support. Ask for support in how to soften into this divine feminine part of yourself. Because it's a journey. And believe me, me as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, was so conditioned to be in my masculine. Excuse me, not feminine, my masculine. It was like second nature to me. And so I had to learn how to soften into the feminine. I had to learn how to listen to my intuition. I had to learn how to allow my nervous system to choose a baseline over safety versus survival. I had to learn these things. I had to practice them. So lean into support, ask for support. Because once you start to soften more into your feminine, polarity is polarity. Either your man will step up or you will be able to honor when it's truly time to leave. But until you're connected deeply to your divine feminine knowing, it's going to feel really hard to truly know that. All right, you all, such good questions. I think that that's it for today, because I could go on and on and on and talk to you for hours, but we are going to do these probably every month or so. So if you have questions, make sure that you send them to me on Instagram, send them to me in an email. Know that I am here to answer all of them. And I cannot wait to see you all next week on the Align Love podcast. We have a very special guest. So make sure that you stay tuned, and I will see you in our next episode. I love you guys so much. That wraps up today's episode of the Aligned Love podcast.
One thing that would really help me and the other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in and listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on Instagram at Lauren Zoeller, and please share this podcast with anyone who you think may enjoy it. Until next episode, remember, every transformation begins with one moment of awareness, and I hope today has been yours. I'll see you next time.